April 19th. Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter acknowledges what we have been reporting since the beginning, that the parents are the focus of his murder investigation. May 1st, the Ramseys finally give police their long-awaited formal interview, more than 4 months after their 6-year-old daughter was found murdered in their basement. The next day, they go on national television and proclaim, "We did not do it."
To those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet.
The Ramseys also vow to catch their daughter's killer.
You may be eluding the authorities for a time, but God knows who you are, and we will find you.
July 1st, the Boulder police return to the Ramsey home and spend the day taking measurements to build an architectural model of the crime scene. July 10th, investigators hired by the Ramseys develop a theory linking Psalm 118 to the $118,000 demanded in the ransom note. July 28th, the Ramseys investigative team distributes flyers that detail a possible profile of JonBenet's killer. They also run a full-page ad appealing to the public for help in solving this terrible crime. August 14th, the previously undisclosed portion of the autopsy is finally released under court order. It tells how the beautiful child's body was found clothed in a long-sleeved white t-shirt bearing a silver sequined star. It also
20 years after JonBenet's death, Burke Ramsey sat across from Dr. Phil, the weight of decades pressing down upon him. When asked the seemingly simple question about whether he and JonBenet had eaten pineapple together on that fateful day, his response would echo through the corridors of this enduring mystery. Maybe like, I don't remember specifically eating pineapple, but very well could have like, would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago? You know? But this wasn't just any pineapple. Hidden within JonBenet's stomach lay undigested fragments, silent witnesses to her final hours. In the family's dining room that morning, investigators discovered a bowl of pineapple bearing the fingerprints of both Burke and Patsy, like ghostly signatures on a piece of evidence that refused to be ignored. As one expert would later observe with chilling clarity, the significance of this pineapple bowl suggested that it was someone that JonBenet trusted that sat down and fed her that pineapple. John Ramsey, grappling with unthinkable possibilities, maintained his position with unwavering certainty. In his 1998 interview, he insisted he had no memory of JonBenet eating pineapple that day, nor had he seen any at the White's house where they'd shared their final family dinner. His voice carried the weight of a father's desperation as he emphasized that she could not have eaten it after returning home. She was sound asleep when he carried her upstairs to bed. The very idea that Patsy could have harmed JonBenet struck John as monstrous, yet his mind raced through terrible possibilities. If JonBenet had somehow consumed pineapple between 9 p.m. when they returned home and when her body was discovered, it must have been someone she knew and trusted who offered it to her. Perhaps, he theorized with haunting speculation, someone had lured her downstairs with the promise of a surprise. In his desperation to find answers, John even suggested their beloved Santa Claus, Bill McReynolds, knowing of JonBenet's deep adoration for the man. Patsy Ramsey's recollections painted an equally puzzling picture. She couldn't recall John mentioning that investigator Lou Smith had definitively identified the substance as pineapple. In her mind, the pineapple remained shrouded in uncertainty, an urban legend or mere possibility rather than confirmed fact. When confronted with the evidence during her 1998 interview, she found the scene bizarre. A large bowl of pineapple with an enormous serving spoon sitting abandoned on their table. Weird, she called it, asserting she would never have arranged such a display. Like her husband, Patsy denied feeding JonBenet pineapple after their return home, insisting their daughter was sound asleep. She believed JonBenet couldn't have reached the bowl herself and had never known Burke to prepare midnight snacks for his sister. Even the death of innocence suggested the pineapple remained in the realm of conjecture rather than fact. The coroner had described the substance only as fruit or vegetable, leaving room for doubt. John Andrew Ramsey would later dismiss the pineapple as carrying far more significant some weight than a bowl of pineapple compared to other evidence like the stun gun or ransom note. Yet the autopsy report itself seemed to mock such dismissals, describing yellow to light green tan apparent vegetable or fruit material which may represent fragment of pineapple. The timeline problem, when Burke may have eaten pineapple. But here lies the first crack in the family's carefully constructed narrative. The commentary raises a haunting question about the timing of Burke's potential pineapple consumption on that tragic day. If Burke's evasive response suggests he may have eaten pineapple at some point during those crucial hours, then we must dissect the timeline with surgical precision. The family had enjoyed a late breakfast, followed by their early dinner at the White family's home. Patsy had stated with apparent certainty that she had cleaned the table earlier in the day and had not left any pineapple out. Given these ironclad constraints, the window of opportunity for Burke to have consumed pineapple becomes terrifyingly narrow and specific. This timing issue transforms from mere curiosity into a critical piece of the puzzle when considering the family's movements and activities throughout that fateful day. The cruel mathematics of the day's events leave little room for interpretation. Between the late morning meal and their departure for the White family's gathering, every minute becomes precious evidence. If Patsy indeed cleared their dining table with the thoroughness she claimed, then when exactly could this mysterious pineapple consumption have occurred? The family's schedule that day moved with clockwork precision, breakfast lingering later than usual, preparations for their evening plans, the careful choreography of a family getting ready for Christmas festivities. Yet somewhere within this seemingly innocent timeline lurks a moment when pineapple entered the equation, a moment that Burke's 20-year-later response seems to both acknowledge and desperately avoid pinpointing. His words dance around the possibility without ever landing on certainty, creating a maddening ambiguity that transforms a simple question about fruit into a cornerstone of doubt about what really transpired during those final hours of innocence. The contradiction in JonBenet being lured. The theory that someone lured JonBenet downstairs with the promise of a surprise harbors a chilling contradiction that cuts to the heart of the case. If JonBenet was indeed a willing participant, fully awakened, fully aware, and trusting enough to voluntarily descend those stairs with someone, this scenario would shatter the logic behind using a stun gun to subdue her. The presence of such a device suggests a perpetrator who anticipated fierce resistance or the desperate need to incapacitate their victim, tools unnecessary if she was cooperating with innocent trust. This contradiction exposes a fundamental flaw in theories that attempt to merge willing participation with the calculated use of force or subduing devices. The scenario demands two entirely different approaches that seem to exist in impossible contradiction, like trying to hold both light and darkness in the same space. The very concept of luring implies deception wrapped in kindness, a predator wearing the mask of someone trustworthy, offering something delightful. Yet this gentle manipulation stands in stark opposition to the brutal efficiency of a stun gun, a device designed for instant compliance through electrical shock. These two approaches represent fundamentally different mindsets, one relying on psychological manipulation and trust, the other on immediate physical dominance through technological means. A person confident enough in their relationship with JonBenet to successfully lure her from her bed would have no need for weapons of subjugation. Conversely, someone who came prepared with instruments of force would hardly waste time with elaborate ruses about surprises and treats. The contradiction reveals itself as more than just inconsistent theorizing. It exposes the desperate attempt to reconcile incompatible evidence into a cohesive narrative, forcing puzzle pieces that simply refuse to fit together into the same devastating picture. Patsy's characterization of pineapple as urban legend. Perhaps most disturbing of all is Patsy Ramsey's attempt to relegate the pineapple evidence to the realm of folklore, an urban legend or mere possibility existing only in whispered speculation. This characterization crumbles under the weight of documented medical reality. The autopsy report contains specific, undeniable information about undigested material lodged in JonBenet's stomach, transforming this from speculation into cold, hard fact. How can something be dismissed as legend when it exists as physical evidence within the victim's body, documented in official medical records with scientific precision? The disconnect between calling something an urban legend while it sits preserved in autopsy findings creates a chasm of credibility that seems impossible to bridge. Such a description appears calculated to minimize or dismiss concrete forensic evidence that has been medically documented and verified through the most official channels possible. The term urban legend conjures images of campfire stories and internet rumors, tales passed from person to person until truth becomes indistinguishable from fiction. Yet here stands Patsy, attempting to cast the same dismissive shadow over evidence that exists not in whispered retellings, but in the stark clinical language of forensic pathology. The autopsy findings don't rely on hearsay or speculation. They document physical reality with scientific instruments and medical expertise. When a medical examiner peers into a victim's stomach and catalogs its contents, when laboratory analysis identifies specific materials with chemical precision, when photographs preserve these findings for posterity, the result transcends any possibility of legend or myth. Patsy's characterization becomes not just inaccurate, but actively misleading, suggesting either a profound misunderstanding of forensic science or a deliberate attempt to sow doubt about evidence that refuses to cooperate with preferred narratives. The pineapple fragments didn't whisper their way into JonBenet's digestive system through rumor and speculation. They arrived there through the simple, devastating act of consumption, leaving behind an unmistakable forensic signature that no amount of dismissive language can erase. Innocent memory lapse or intentional evasion. Burke Ramsey's demeanor during questioning has become the subject of intense scrutiny and wildly different interpretations. During his Dr. Phil interview, observers noted his nervous smile and unsettling laugh when asked if he had ever harmed his sister or struck her with a golf club. His response carried an eerie casualness. Not on purpose. She was standing behind me, and I imitates a golf swing went like that. But it was his rhetorical deflection about the pineapple that would haunt investigators. Would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago, you know? The lawsuit filed by Burke Ramsey against CBS painted a picture of calculated character destruction. The legal documents assert that defendants falsely portrayed Burke as knowing the pineapple was a smoking gun and intentionally deceiving law enforcement about his knowledge. The lawsuit quotes Clemente's damning assessment, claiming Burke was acting like a smart aleck and that his dramatic change in behavior during questioning revealed he was aware that that piece of pineapple in JonBenet's stomach actually creates a major problem in terms of the timeline of when and how she was killed. The defendant's theory, derived from foreign faction, suggested Burke had ended his sister's life in a fit of rage after she dared to take a piece of his pineapple, a theory so disturbing it defied comprehension. During Detective Schuler's interview, conducted approximately 18 months after the tragedy, Burke confirmed that JonBenet liked pineapple a lot. Yet, when presented with a photograph of the dining room table displaying the infamous pineapple bowl, his responses became a masterclass in evasion. First, he described it as something looks like glass with a tea bag in it, then shifted to maybe like fruit. There wouldn't be a spoon in it. I done know. Richards, one of the experts mentioned in the CBS lawsuit, characterized this as deliberate evasion, such a simple question to ask. So why isn't he just saying what it is? He's evading any answer and is uncomfortable about answering. This should be an insignificant conversation. Clemente noted Burke's dramatic change in behavior when confronted with the pineapple photograph, a shift that spoke volumes in its very silence. Yet others painted Burke's responses in a more sympathetic light. Patsy revealed that Burke's therapist, Dr. Jaffe, believed the boy was trying to hold it together and be real strong for John and I, and that children handle things differently than adults. Dr. Jaffe's assessment: Burke was fine. Burke himself, during his Dr. Phil appearance, explained that the intense media scrutiny had transformed him into a very private person, describing how the relentless attention had made his family's lives utterly crazy following the tragedy. John Ramsey had stated they were comfortable with Burke being interviewed as a child, noting that Burke himself found the experience the most boring thing I have done in my life, a response that seemed almost surreal given the circumstances. The Boulder Police Department's perspective, as articulated by Mark Beckner in his 2015 AMA, revealed their frustration. After an initial brief interview, Burke was questioned only once more by a social services worker, and police were never given an opportunity to interview him again. Beckner noted with evident irritation that Burke, as an adult, refused to submit to further interviews, describing it as a typical Ramsey response. Yet perhaps most crucial was Detective Fred Patterson's conclusion after interviewing Burke shortly after JonBenét's body was discovered. Patterson concluded that Burke had no knowledge of what had happened to JonBenet, a finding that the CBS defendants allegedly knowingly disregarded in their pursuit of a sensational theory. Burke's behavioral responses, John Andrews' prioritization of other evidence, John Andrew Ramsey's assertion that evidence like the stun gun carries more weight than the pineapple creates a disturbing house of cards built on speculation. His argument crumbles under logical scrutiny when we realize he's prioritizing uncertain, unconfirmed evidence over the concrete reality documented in his sister's body. The stun gun remains a theoretical possibility, dancing in the shadows of maybe and perhaps, while the pineapple evidence stands as an immutable fact preserved in autopsy findings. This twisted logic places ghostly theories above documented medical reality, creating a hierarchy of evidence that defies rational analysis. The pineapple's exact location within JonBenét's digestive system provides investigators with crucial timeline information, concrete data that exists beyond doubt or speculation. Yet here stands a family member desperately attempting to redirect attention toward evidence that may not even exist, while dismissing the very real, very tangible proof that could unlock the timeline of those final terrible hours. Patsy's statement about Burke's feeding habits. Patsy's carefully crafted assertion that she never knew Burke to feed JonBenet during nighttime hours reveals itself as a masterpiece of misdirection, a statement that adds nothing meaningful to the investigation while appearing to provide crucial information. This calculated comment creates a smokescreen, focusing attention on one impossibly narrow scenario while conveniently ignoring the vast landscape of other possibilities that sprawl beyond her specific denial. The reality remains that various household members could have been involved in countless different ways, making Patsy's surgical precision about Burke's nighttime feeding habits feel orchestrated rather than organic. Her statement addresses only the tiniest sliver of a much larger, more complex question about who provided JonBenet with that final, fateful snack. The narrowness of her denial becomes suspicious in its very specificity. Why focus on such a particular scenario unless it serves to deflect from broader, more uncomfortable questions about what really happened in those dark morning hours? Expert assessment of pineapple discussion significance. The experts were right. Discussions about the pineapple should flow as naturally as breathing, representing nothing more than a simple question demanding a simple answer. Yet watching the Ramsey family navigate this topic becomes like witnessing a choreographed dance of avoidance, each step calculated to sidestep the truth that lies waiting in plain sight. The stark contrast between what should be effortless conversation and the painful contortions the family performs to avoid direct answers transforms this simple piece of evidence into something far more sinister. Their apparent discomfort reaches through the screen, through the transcripts, through decades of interviews, suggesting that this humble bowl of pineapple holds secrets they desperately hope will remain buried. When a family consistently struggles to address straightforward questions about fruit, when they dismiss its importance or claim it's meaningless, the very pattern of avoidance begins to tell its own story. The evidence may be simple, but the family's relationship with it has become impossibly complex, a complexity that seems to grow more tangled with each passing year, each new interview, each attempt to minimize what forensic science has made undeniably clear. Should forensic questioning consider rhetorical dodges as indicators of stress? The art of questioning suspects and witnesses in criminal investigations carries the weight of justice itself, and how individuals respond, particularly through rhetorical dodges, becomes a crucial element in the pursuit of truth. Lou Smith, the seasoned investigator, outlined the process with clinical precision. Detectives gather information like archaeologists collecting artifacts, which is then evaluated by prosecutors and others who must decide whether charges should be filed. Mike Kane, the prosecutor, emphasized the critical importance of obtaining accurate, unvarnished answers without allowing subjects to engage in quibbling, a necessity for preparing against potential defense strategies that might emerge in court. The CBS lawsuit highlighting Burke's responses reveals how pseudo-experts interpreted his behavior as indicators of guilt or deliberate evasion, constructing what they called the preposterous theory that Burke killed JonBenet for taking his pineapple. Yet even these experts acknowledged the precarious nature of their behavioral analysis. Kohler himself admitted that such behavioral indicators were of a highly speculative nature and utterly insufficient to prove actual involvement in any crime. The emotional landscape of those being questioned adds another layer of complexity to this already intricate puzzle. During a 1997 interview, Jon Ramsey learned that his overwhelming emotions, particularly the tremendous guilt that consumed him over failing to protect his daughter, could significantly impact polygraph test results. Patsy described herself as hysterical in those first moments after discovering the ransom note, and her interviews revealed that stress could affect her ongoing battle with cancer. Jon detailed his psychological state in The Death of Innocence, describing himself as distraught with short-term memory impaired, making basic communication and focus nearly impossible during those crucial initial stages of the investigation. Brian Morgan, the Ramseys' lawyer, indicated that discussing the family's emotional attitude during those dark days might not be productive, but expressed willingness to document their reasons for their actions, a statement that hinted at underlying complexities and stress that may never be fully understood. The initial police approach, as Walker noted in the CBS lawsuit, was to treat them with kid gloves, treat them with deference, treat them as victims and not as suspects due to their influential and wealthy status. This deferential treatment could have profoundly influenced how responses, including rhetorical dodges, were initially perceived, recorded, and interpreted by investigators. John Andrew Ramsey, speaking on the Defense Diaries podcast, questioned the entire significance of the pineapple evidence, dismissing it as grasping at straws. He desperately emphasized that other pieces of evidence, the stun gun, the ransom note, carried far more significant weight than a simple bowl of fruit. Forensic and legal implications, Burke's adult interview avoidance versus media appearances. The calculated pattern of Burke's media strategy reveals a chilling contradiction that cuts to the very heart of his family's approach to this investigation. Here stands a man who refuses to submit to formal police interviews as an adult, yet willingly places himself before television cameras for carefully orchestrated media appearances like his Dr. Phil interview. This selective communication strategy mirrors the exact approach employed by other family members who continue making controlled media appearances while steadfastly avoiding the more rigorous, legally binding nature of sworn statements or formal law enforcement interviews. The stark selectivity in choosing glossy media forums over official investigative channels raises haunting questions about what truly motivates these communication choices. When individuals repeatedly claim they want to help solve this case, but simultaneously avoid the most direct and effective methods of providing crucial information to the very authorities investigating it, the disconnect between their stated intentions and actual actions becomes impossible to ignore. This pattern suggests a desperate preference for controlled, media-friendly environments, where questions can be anticipated and responses carefully crafted, rather than submitting to the unpredictable and legally consequential nature of formal police interrogation. Clemente's assessment of timeline issues. The expert analysis supporting the significance of the pineapple evidence creates a timeline crisis that threatens to unravel carefully constructed narratives about when JonBenet actually drew her final breath. If determined efforts persist in associating her death with December 25th, while forensic evidence screams that she actually died around 1 a.m. on December 26th, this discrepancy transforms from minor detail into the foundation upon which all theories must stand or fall. The mysterious resistance to accepting the later timeline raises disturbing questions about why anyone would fight so desperately to maintain association with an earlier date when physical evidence points inexorably toward a different reality. This timeline battle becomes particularly crucial when we consider how different timing scenarios might completely reshape or destroy various theories about what truly occurred in those final hours. The forensic evidence provided by the pineapple's precise digestive state offers investigators concrete data points that cannot be argued away, manipulated, or dismissed. Objective scientific markers that must be reconciled with any proposed sequence of events, no matter how uncomfortable those facts might prove for established narratives. Burke's acknowledgement of JonBenet's pineapple preference. Burke's simple confirmation that JonBenet liked pineapple a lot becomes a crucial piece of evidence that transforms the digestive findings from mysterious anomaly into logical conclusion. This acknowledgement establishes beyond doubt that pineapple consumption would have been perfectly consistent with JonBenet's known preferences, making it entirely plausible that she would have eagerly consumed it if someone she trusted had offered it to her. The pathological analysis of her digestive contents takes on even greater significance when we realize that other foods consumed earlier that evening, such as the cracked crab served around 7:30 p.m., have completely vanished from her system, processed and eliminated by her body's natural digestive rhythm. The stark absence of evidence from the earlier family dinner, combined with the haunting presence of undigested pineapple fragments, creates a forensic timeline that demands answers from anyone seeking to understand those final hours. This digestive evidence provides objective, scientific data about when certain foods entered her system relative to when her life ended. Data that exists independent of testimony, independent of memory, independent of family narratives. The forensic timeline created by her body's own digestive processes must be addressed by any theory attempting to explain what happened that night, as these biological markers offer perhaps the most reliable witness to the sequence of events in this enduring mystery. The truth may never be legally proven, but the shadows of that truth continue to darken everything they fall upon. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more storytelling analysis like this.